Welcome back to Chapter 8. If you couldn't tell by the video length, this one's a bit of a long one, so buckle up, grab some snacks, maybe do something else in the background for a little while, I don't know. Do what you need to do to get through it, because it's not all that exciting. That said, we are getting one of my favourite characters from FE6 this chapter, Lilina. You can see her in a little prison up the top left right there. We just clicked on her. Right now, it's funny. She starts as a part of your team, so you can move her from the first turn. But she doesn't come with any weapons, and she's completely trapped in that little prison. So it's impossible for her to actually do anything for quite a few turns until you reach her. I guess they let us move her because if we weren't able to, then that archer would probably kill her 9 runs out of 10. The archer right next to her prison. Fortunately for us, that archer has aggressive AI and he will target Marcus through the wall here. And from that point on, Lilina will be safe until we get to her. Since every other enemy on the map that moves is going to try to get to our other units through that giant spiral corridor. Speaking of the spiral corridor, it's basically the main reason why this map takes so long. It's so big. Just an absolutely absurd amount of ground that all our units have to cover to get to the boss. Even taking a shortcut through the chest room, it's still going to take a long time. So I'm actually pretty excited to get Lilina. She's going to be our first mage from the entire run. And magical damage is really useful in this game. There's a lot of really high defense but low res enemies. Particularly wyverns later on in the run are going to be really difficult to deal with for our standard units that aren't our archers or Lilina. Their defense is absolutely massive. HP speed luck there from Sue, not bad, not bad. It was kind of difficult to figure out how to move all my units. I wanted them to be obviously roughly at the same place so that they all had the chance to get some kills, but it's just so much more convenient to send my high move units further ahead to deal with most of the threats and have the rest of my units just follow them. So at least for this first part of the map, it's pretty much just Marcus and Lance Emblem, with a little bit of ward chipping in every now and then, and I think Sue does a little bit as well. But these first enemies are really not all that scary anyway, just a bunch of soldiers, knights, and a mage or two, a few archers. Not a big deal. So that mage down the bottom left that just opened the door, for some reason that mage will do that on that turn, but then won't move for the rest of the map until we get to them. I don't know what makes their AI perform like that, but I guess it's nice. It means we save a door key use. Speaking of these knights that we were looking at earlier, the one Marcus is fighting is fine. That crit was pretty nice, but not necessary. The other knight that's still alive has a horse slayer, which means that if he hits one of our horse units, he's going to do a boatload of damage. Luckily for us, this is FE6, and effective weapons have no hit on them. So even if we do want to use our horse units to fight that kind of enemy, we'll be fine. Hopefully, mostly. This thief we're moving, I actually didn't mention him. That's Astol. He's a new unit we got starting this chapter. I had no choice but to deploy him because you can't even see him during preparations. He only appears once you've started the map. Of course, I won't be using him. He comes with a lockpick and an iron sword, which is nice. I'll sell the lockpick and just keep the iron sword. Combat-wise, stat-wise, he's actually a decent unit. Even on hard mode, he has some decent stats to him. For a thief, he can perform combat at a decent level. But of course, we're not going to be using him, so he will be just tagging behind the rest of my units, maybe plugging up a reinforcement spot or two later in the map, and then we will never see him again. Unfortunate, but such is life. So you see here, that's the Night Killer right there, the Horse Slayer Knight. So instead of just charging ahead, I opted to wait one turn, let my units catch up, and deal with him once I have more hands available. He actually managed to hit Ward there through the triangle disadvantage, which is unfortunate, but doesn't really matter in the long run. This map only took one attempt to complete, because it is pretty simple despite how long it takes. There's really not a whole lot to it, and the enemies, including the boss, are not particularly strong. You do have to watch out for a few of the mages, but in general it's just a match of don't get hit by all the soldiers at the same time, which is pretty easy to do looking at these hit rates. They're not the most accurate things in the world. This entire map I struggled to find a place for Boars, struggled to find things for him to do, just because the map is so huge it was difficult to keep him at the front lines. Fantastic level up from him, by the way. He does actually get some decent use, particularly towards the end with some reinforcements, but for most of the map he just lags behind and doesn't accomplish a whole lot, which is really unfortunate, but that's just the downfall of the Knight class, I suppose. It's what makes them bad in traditional runs. Speaking of traditionally bad, my Roy is actually turning out really well. Those stats are pretty mean for his level. Of course, he won't be promoted for a very long time, which is the main reason why he's considered to be not very good. But for what he is, I'm enjoying using him a lot more than I thought I would starting the run. He's performing very well, unlike a certain archer that I just moved. Cough cough. Rutger is also another unit that didn't see too much combat this map. Partly because he was constantly lagging behind, and also partly because there are a lot of lance enemies on this map and not a whole lot of axes, if any. Oh, I think there's a few axes later on, but I don't think Rutger fights any of them. So it was pretty hard to feed him kills, not that he needs them. And here's some fresh meat. That's OJ, Bath, and Wendy. So you see OJ here, he's basically a worse Deke at this point in the game, but of course we're not using Deke and we won't be using him either. Bath is a traditional knight. He has a lot of defense, he has decent attack and pretty much nothing else. And then Wendy, oh Wendy is in the running for being one of the worst units in the entirety of Fire Emblem. I would personally say that Sophia is worse overall, but Wendy makes a compelling argument for me to change my stance on that. Fantastic level up from Lance there. The reason she's so bad is that she's a level 1 knight, which is already not good for this point in the game. Not that knights would be a good thing at any point in the game, but especially now. And she doesn't even have the bases or all the growths that you would expect for such a painful class to level up. You know, at least if your knight comes with attack and defense, they can do something, but she comes with basically nothing. Really hard to use her. I'm very fortunate that I was not told to use her this run. That would have been pretty disastrous. I'd really rather not. So as for what I'll do with those three, they'll donate their weapons, they will plug up some reinforcement spots, and that'll be it. Unfortunately, they will see combat a few times this map, and by combat I mean they'll be shot at by archers. There really wasn't much I could do about it without exposing some of my other units, so I'm just going to take it as it is. I'd rather not have had it happen, but sometimes that's just how it is. I want to talk about OJ real quick, because I actually really like him, and I'm not entirely sure why. When I first played through FE6 and I saw him, my first thought was, I'm playing a hacked ROM, and this is someone's OC character that they put into the game. he looked that odd to me, and since I'd never ever heard anyone anywhere talk about him, that's really what I thought he was. I thought he was some sort of joke, or maybe some kid won a contest to have their OC character put into the game or something like that. But no, he's an actual character from FE6, and I would love to have used him on this run. I really would. But I think even the people who were recommending me units had forgotten that he exists, so it didn't happen. Maybe another day. I'd like to use him the next time I play through FE6, but that probably won't be for quite some time. And you see here, this is the big problem with this map, where there's nothing particularly for our units to be doing right now, but because it's so long and takes so long to get anywhere, there's just these lulls in action where I couldn't possibly have gotten to where I am any faster. I couldn't possibly have been taking on any of these units without just, I don't know, barging in with Marcus, I guess, which is basically what I'm doing right here, right now. Nice crit from him right there. That mage wasn't too deadly, but any damage you can save yourself from getting when you're facing a bunch of enemies at the same time is nice. This corridor is probably one of the more deadly parts of the entire map, really. There's a lot of enemies, high concentration, and a few deadly ones, a few mages, archers, and of course the soldiers hit hard, and the knights are hard to kill. Problem with the map size being demonstrated right here. Just takes so long to move all these units. Here I'm just swapping over the weapons just to make sure that if they ever do get into combat, that neither of those three can actually do any damage, which would defeat the purpose of the run, of course. Marcus is actually at that sweet spot where he mostly doesn't kill things in one round anymore, but he sets them up really nicely for the rest of my units to kill, which is exactly what you want your Jagan to be doing. He's not going to be that good for that much longer, but what he's doing right now is really appreciated. The plan was to have Marcus be healed right there and then go kill that mage, so that the rest of my units could clean up these other remaining units, but unfortunately Marcus doesn't double that mage and doesn't kill him in one hit. We're a bit beyond that point, where Marcus is just a god that can kill everything. But that's alright, no one's gonna die on my watch. Sorry about that. Even with an axe, Marcus can't kill this knight in one turn. They just have so much defense. They're just not especially deadly, that's all. They don't have very high hit, and their weapons are fairly weak. Although some of them have steel lances, which is a little bit scary. Here I'm just making sure that I can safely drop Saul out of range of any enemies. I decided to leave Sue in range because whoever can attack her has 2 range, and that's how they'll be forced to attack her. So she'll be alright no matter what happens. Oh, part of me. Something interesting that I'm sure you'll have already encountered if you played through FE6 is that Kath would have spawned with another thief here on turn 10, I believe it is. But fortunately for us, we killed Kath. Kath is dead. Marcus shoved a spear right through her torso, right through her head, and she's gone. So we won't have her or her thief buddy attempting to steal any of our goodies during the rest of this map. Of course, in classic FE6 hard mode style, there will be more reinforcements to come, but as of right now, thieves will not be one of them. So the Corridor of Doom is basically dealt with at this point. Just this mage and 1 knight left. I decided to use a sword there just because it had more accuracy. It didn't really matter, I probably wouldn't have failed to kill that guy anyway, but best not take any chances. And Marcus sets this kill up oh so perfectly for any unit that I want, except that I don't think Wolt can kill him without a steel bow, because Wolt is garbage. It's really annoying how this mage can basically see the entire left side of the hole, meaning that I can't really put anyone there. So I decided to just kill that knight with boars. And here the video is being sped up quite a bit, because this portion is basically just movement. It's just moving my units through this little chest room, treasure room. I'll leave Wolt and Lance in there to grab the treasure, and move everyone else forward to Lilina's cage. There's no enemies to be found through this section of the map. It's just because the map is so huge that it takes so long to do. I could probably have even sped this up a little bit longer, but I wanted to make sure that you'd be able to see the treasure we're getting. Speaking of treasure, you know how last chapter I said that I was only grinding to get enough keys for some of the treasure? Well, I kind of made a mistake. Just a tiny weeny little one. And I didn't notice that chest keys have 5 uses and not just 1. Little bit of an error on my part, I will admit. So I may have accidentally bought approximately 5 times more chest keys than I actually needed to. Possibly. So, unfortunately, yeah, I will be getting every treasure that I want for the rest of the run, and I'll probably still have chest keys to spare. I didn't mean to do it. I'm just stupid. Please understand. But no, even then I'm probably not going to open every chest in the entire game, because not every chest is worth getting. There's a lot of chests that have items that I don't really care about, and so I'll probably leave them be regardless. It just means that I can sell back some of these chest keys for a little bit of money later on when I have the opportunity, and when I've been bothered to figure out the maths and exactly how many chest keys I actually need. See, I got a night crest there, and I actually debated sending it back, but I decided to put it on Lance because I wasn't sure if I was going to promote him by the end of the chapter. If you're smart, you would have noticed that Rutger also has his promotion item, the Hero Crest, because I was also considering promoting him at the end of the chapter as well. That didn't happen, spoiler alert. I have not promoted anyone yet by the end of the chapter. And it's simply because they all had just a little bit too much experience for me to want to waste that. I figured I would just get them all one more level up and then promote them. Speaking of promoting, it was really difficult to decide whether or not I would be promoting Rutger or Ward first. They both use the same promotion item, and as of right now, I only have one. And it's the classic Fire Emblem dilemma of, do I promote the bad unit to try to make them a little bit better, try to make them a little bit more usable, or do I promote the unit that's already good and turn them into an absolute god? But I'll talk about that more when I actually promote them, which isn't this chapter. As for now, you'll see that that knight has a killer lance, and right there I was just checking the math to make sure that Lance wouldn't get his shit kicked in by that killer lance if he decided to crit. Luckily for me, Lance will live. I think actually with the help of the angelic robe he got fed a few chapters ago, he will live. Maybe without it he wouldn't have been able to, but I'm not good at math and I'm not going to figure that out. I guess we'll see once he takes the crit. Oops, spoilers. He does get crit. This turn was actually pretty perilous. This coming turn, that is, this coming enemy phase. I thought that Lance was going to die, to be completely honest with you. He took that crit. Yeah, without the angelic robe, he would have had 1 health at this point. Very scary. But fortunately for me, this archer decides to go for Wendy instead, and I think he would have killed her if he connected with both shots, which shows you how shit Wendy is. A unit that's in a class that's famous for having high defense is so poor, has such poor defense, that they would die in 1 round to a steel bow archer that doesn't even have very high stats. Very unfortunate. Here, I wanted to not have to double that that knight with the killer lance, because I didn't want Ward getting critted as well. Knowing my luck, it would have happened. Instead, I get lucky and I just shove a hammer into his face. And he's dead. He's dead now. So I got here just a little bit too late. I think I did a bit too much fluffing around in the treasure room, because I wanted to be at this point in the map before all these reinforcements started coming. They don't stop coming out of these little staircases for quite some time. I wanted to be here to plug them up before that happened, but unfortunately I was a little bit too late. Very nice, Sue. Fantastic level up right there. These enemies aren't too much of a problem though. We do get our units into those reinforcement positions soon enough. It does take a few waves of them to spawn before that happens though. And I believe the reinforcements from the top of the map have started spawning as well. They spawn from the same place that OJ, Bath and Wendy spawn. So if you decide to just leave them there because you think, oh, well, I'm not going to use them anyway, I may as well just not move them, well, they're gonna die. Plain and simple, they're just gonna die. And speaking of making things die, here's Lilina. Lilina is, in my opinion, Nino if Nino was a good unit and came earlier in the game. Her growths, particularly in magic, are absolutely stellar. She'll be growing magic almost every time she levels up. And because the resistance of most enemies in most Fire Emblems, with this one being no exception, because their resistance is so low, it's relatively easy to feed her kills in comparison to lower level melee units like, for example, Wendy, who would struggle to even deal damage to a lot of enemies at this point in the game. So Lilina, some people might think that she's pretty poor in quality in hard mode, but honestly, I was excited to use her, and so far, in my experience, she's been pretty good. Of course, any level 1 mage at this point in the game will require some babying to become good, but that's just a given. Better Lilina than Sophia, in my opinion. So you see there, I just did a support with Roy and Lilina, because I was aware that there was some sort of conversation between them had to happen in order to get a free Thunder Tome out of it. I wasn't aware that Lilina had to initiate the talk with Roy. That's what had to happen. I'd completely forgotten. You might have even seen me fumbling around with those two earlier, just after the wall had been broken and she was freed, trying to figure out how to get that free tome. I did eventually get it, but I just couldn't remember exactly how I was supposed to at this point in the game. So you see there, more reinforcements. Basically FE6 in a nutshell, more reinforcements. Luckily next chapter we'll get a bit of a break from that. But as of right now, we've got a bit of stuff to deal with before we can take on the boss. We're getting reinforcements from where we are, to the left, and up top. Loads of enemies. I decided to just have Marcus plug up that hole down the bottom left, just for the meantime, since it is just a 1 tile wide choke point. I figured it couldn't hurt. At this point, he doesn't kill them in 1 round either, so the very worst case scenario is that he's just setting up a kill for someone else. Mercenaries once again being the most annoying class in the game. Just not dying, having very high avoid. Luckily Boars hits his javelin there, but could have been bad. Here I wanted to get this kill with Lilina. That archer almost one-shots Lilina, and here I initiate that conversation to get that free thunder. Luckily they decided to design Lilina with the stats that just avoid being one-shot by most things, so we're quite fortunate. She's not going to be a complete liability until she levels up. Speaking of leveling up, Saul is actually very close to capping. Capping his level, that is. He's almost reached level 20. But I am very happy to just let him sit at cap for a while if I need to, because he's at the bottom of my deployment order. He will be the last unit that I choose to deploy if I have to deploy less than 13. Which means that on any maps where I do have to deploy less than 13 units and I have my whole squad, I will be without a healer. And that's a very bad thing. If you remember back to the first few chapters before we got Saul, they were incredibly difficult. There was a bunch of vulnerary spam and it wasn't a very good time. I used all my gold on vulneraries and only barely had enough for that entire run. So instead of promoting Saul, what I'm going to do is just hold on to my one guiding ring and save that for Lilina. I want her promoted as soon as possible, so I will attempt to baby her a little bit and feed her as many levels as possible in the next few maps. It shouldn't be too difficult, and of course I'm probably not going to promote her at level 10 exactly. I usually don't do that. I think 15 is a good sweet spot in the GBA games for promotion, where you've gotten just about as many levels as you're going to get with easy XP, and the XP starts to trickle down even slower than it used to. But I do want to reach that point as soon as possible with Lilina, so that she can become a second healer. And at that point I will promote Saul. Yeah, speaking of promotions, there's Lance. Absolute unit. That guy is so good. I think he's turning out even better than he did during my first run. So it's at this point that we're going to turtle a little bit. I wanted to deal with all the reinforcements before I started to tackle the boss. So we're going to be moving Boars and Marcus up to plug that hole. Have them deal with the hail of reinforcements that have come from the top. Ward, Sue, Roy and Rutger will deal with some of the bottom reinforcements, bottom left. There's not too many of them comparatively, but they do need to be dealt with, of course. If I was a faster player, I could have avoided even fighting the top reinforcements, but as I've said many times through this playthrough already, playing fast isn't really a big option for me if I want to make sure that some of my units don't become completely obsolete. And hey, it's good experience. Marcus needs all the experience he can get. He gets it so slowly. It's nice to have Lilina be able to chip or get some kills. You know, the only downside is that it just takes longer. But we already know how long some of these maps can get. Speaking of, I think we're already over halfway through the map. Yay, not a whole lot left. I will be speeding up most of the reinforcements that are coming from the top, just because, much like last chapter, it's just the same set of enemies crashing into the same two of my units over and over again. It's not especially engaging. If ever you were just gonna click away and start doing something else in the background, now would probably be the time. At least until we get to the boss. While we have a little bit of downtime here, I thought I would just draw attention to the little overlay that I've put on this video. I finally figured out how to do that, and when I say finally figured out, I mean I stopped being lazy and googled it. Let me know what you think about that. I quite like it. The black bars are pretty ugly in my opinion, so I don't know exactly if this is the right size. I might be covering up a little bit of the video, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm happy with it for now. I'm a lazy boy and I don't want to do too much work, so it's fine for now. HP luck, very Marcus level up right there, but it wasn't just HP, so I'm happy with that. Ward will get a decent chunk of experience by killing all these knights and soldiers. Basically the only thing he's good at this point. He has a lot of strength, and that's about it. Here I snag a kill with Lilina. HP, magic, speed, luck. Fantastic first level up. That's a sign of good things to come if you ask me. Hopefully I didn't just jinx that though. Honestly, I probably could have afforded to speed this up a little bit further, a little bit faster even. But there's a bit of combat here, which isn't the most boring thing in the world. I had to play a bit of a balancing game there with Wendy and OJ, because this is the part of the map where they start to engage in a bit of combat against my wishes. I wouldn't have preferred it. I didn't really want them to be taking these shots from the archers, but I definitely wanted those reinforcement stairs plugged, and I didn't really know who else to use at this point, because I'd put them there with the intention of them being the only units I'd need to plug those holes, and I'd started to move away everyone else. So none of my units are in a good spot to replace them at this point, meaning that I just opt to leave them there while these reinforcements crash down. Luckily none of them die, so not that that would matter a whole lot, but they are carrying some weapons and such, so it'd be a bit of a waste of cash to let them die. Just a wave of these 2-range enemies coming down. The mercenaries are pretty annoying. They don't get doubled by anyone except Lance, and probably Rutger as well. I decided to replace Wendy with Astol because I have a feeling that Wendy would get killed in one round by any of those archers, and I wasn't interested in that happening. At least Astol can live a few rounds of combat. In hindsight here, I probably could have rescue dropped Lilina with Marcus and then moved him back into his spot, plugging up the hole. But it didn't really matter a whole lot. I wouldn't have doubled that mercenary anyway, even if that javelin didn't break. Because mercenaries are fast. News at 11. I'm actually forced to use a few vulneraries with both Astol and OJ by the end of the map, otherwise they would have died. They actually do come pretty close to death, but luckily it doesn't happen. The enemies thin out before that happens. I so desperately wanted to just chuck Lance into that horde of enemies and have him just rip and tear through them with a javelin, but I figured that wouldn't be the safest thing in the world, and I really didn't want to repeat the chapter. At this point it's been half an hour, and I just didn't feel like it, so I did the safe thing. I just had him do a little support convo with Wolt, which I will never read because I don't care about Wolt or what he has to say. So this is the last turn of combat with these reinforcements, which is why the speed has stopped. I figured that it would be worth watching how I deal with all these enemies on the last turn of their reinforcements. Another level up for Lilina. Strength magic. Strength magic? Same thing. Strength speed. Magic speed. You know what I'm trying to say. Very, very good. It's exactly what she got the first time with a little bit less stats, but I will absolutely take magic and speed. Lilina is not exactly known for being fast, so getting speed like that twice in a row is actually pretty good. So these reinforcements are just about done. One more enemy phase of combat. Speed, luck on boars there. I don't know who you think you're going to be outrunning my guy. That armor looks pretty heavy, and you're a bit chubby, if I do say so myself. Maybe invest that speed point into a stat that actually matters on an armor knight at this point. I know that earlier on in the run I said that speed wasn't that bad on him, But that was back when our enemies were kind of garbage. At this point, he's not doubling anything except for soldiers, and everybody doubles soldiers. So he's not special. And he doesn't need any more speed. I suppose it's still not the worst thing in the world. Speed is bulk. If he's not getting doubled, then he's essentially taking half damage, but at the same time, you need strength, my dude. You really need some strength. Strength and defense. That's what I want from you. I decided to just heal with Saul here. I didn't really need to heal Boars at this point in the map. He doesn't really do anything else. But I figured why not. I know I said before that I wasn't going to do random wasteful heals, but yeah. So here, I really don't like it when Fire Emblem games do this, where some enemies just don't move without there being any indication that they wouldn't. It's really annoying, it's really tricky to deal with, and that's exactly what's happening here. The mage in the boss room does move, but the Armor Knight doesn't, and of course, I wasn't aware of this because I forgot my first run. I don't remember what happened on it, and there's no indication that this would be the case. So I didn't exactly know how to even approach this. At the end of the day, I decided to just chuck Rutger into the pillars, into the defensive terrain, and have him soak up whatever damage came his way, assuming he would live. At which point I found out that only the mage moves when provoked. The Armor Knight is completely stationary until you go up to him. I just find that kind of design pretty confusing, to be honest. I think if you're going to have enemies that don't move, that's fine, but any enemy in that vicinity shouldn't move. There should be some uniformity to it. Here I'm just looking over the hit rates and deciding whether or not I risk trying to kill that Armor Knight in one hit with the hammer. I wouldn't have died if I got hit by the mage and the Armor Knight, but the mage, Armor Knight, and then the Armor Knight again would have killed me. So I decided not to use Ward there, and instead I'm eventually just going to chuck Rutger into the pillar, as I said. Chuck on an Armor Slayer for good measure. Actually, never mind. Disregard that, I'm dumb. And now the map is mostly over. Just a handful of enemies left, the Armor Knight, 2 mages, and the boss. Rutger being a reliable mage killer as always. Fantastic hit rates and always doubles them. I love him so much for killing mages. And Ward gets that one shot on the Armor Knight. Very impressive. Fortunately, he will not be doing the same thing for the boss. But bosses are bosses. I suppose that's a given. You see there just how many chest keys I brought on Roy, assuming that they only had one use each. My mistake. As I said, I apologize. I am very stupid, please forgive me. But there's really not much left to say about this map. There's a few chests in the top left that I will be getting after the boss has been dealt with. I kind of forgot about them while I was fighting the boss, but I'll just speed up that portion of actually getting them so you can see what they are without wasting all your time. Here I made a really dumb mistake. I tested whether or not Sue could kill that mage, and she couldn't by like 1 point of strength or something like that. And so, thinking that the mage would attack me at 2 range for some reason, I put her in the pillar, forgetting that mages can attack at 1 and 2 range. I guess I've been playing too much heroes recently, and it just slipped my brain that that's not how mages work in Fire Emblem. Oops. It's alright though, because I think he misses anyway since I'm in a pillar. Would make sense. Just a quick little highlight of the boss's stats right there. He's not too scary, and he's a general, so the class isn't that scary either. But he does get those throne bonuses, which are on steroids in this game. Here Marcus just gets the kill. I would have done it with Sue if I could, but unfortunately wasn't given the opportunity. Here's one of the rare bosses that doesn't have any crit against Rutger, meaning that it's completely fine to just let him sit there and attempt to kill. I decided to turn on animations for just a few turns to see what the boss is like, and I decided to see what Ward could potentially do, which is nothing, of course. Ward can do nothing. I moved him into the corner of shame, because what kind of axe unit with a hammer can't kill a general? Here, if I leave only Rutger in range and keep rescuing Lilina, he won't switch to his javelin, meaning that she can just get free chip damage, which is free experience, and for her level it's actually quite a lot. You see there, it's a decent chunk just for hitting him with that one damage. She's never going to get the kill, mind you, but damage is damage and experience is experience. She also had a boss quote, boss conversation with this guy. It's all lore related, but you don't care. You don't care about that. And also, I forgot to turn on her animations specifically, because I got her this chapter. So, oops. I guess we'll see them in a minute, maybe. This guy's pretty full of himself. I'm glad we got the opportunity to shut him down. Unfortunately not going to happen this turn. But that's alright, we have all the time in the world. Your reinforcements are dead, my friend. Yep, so here we get to see Lilina doing her thing. Not actually doing anything at all. But hey, again, experience is experience, even if it's just 1 point. I really don't know what the devs were thinking with throwing bonuses in this game. Pretty ridiculous. But that's not going to save this guy. He gets killed by Rutger the boss killer. And that is pretty much the map. Level up for Rutger here. Strength, speed, fantastic. At this point I was debating whether or not I would promote him right here, right now. But after looking at him, he is very close to another level up. I think he had 77 experience or something like that. And so I figured I would just promote him next chapter, next time he leveled up. I could have promoted Ward here as well, but I decided essentially the same thing. He's fairly close to a level up, and it just wasn't that urgent. Yeah, 73 on him. I figured I'd just get another kill with him, probably promote him second. I don't have a second hero crest right now, so I will have to promote him significantly later. But that's alright. Getting some treasure over here, some promotion items and some weapons, and a secret book, which is basically just free cash. And that's the chapter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.